At InDigital, we know the public safety professionals hold themselves to a high standard. In fact, standard doesn't do it justice. In over 25 years working alongside you, carrying millions of calls over our IP networks, your dedication has inspired us. That's why our ESI Net goes beyond industry standards, not only i3 compliant, but designed to adapt to future development for a network you can count on when it matters most. Learn more at indigital.net.
Rapid Deploy believes that every public safety agency, regardless of size, should have access to the data they need when it matters most. That's why, since 2016, our mission has been to reduce emergency response times and improve public safety. We are the industry's only integrated emergency response platform. Our web-based cloud platform includes analytics, mapping, dispatch, and mobile apps, purpose-built for 911 in the 21st century. Visit www.rapiddeploy.com to learn how we enable effective, efficient, data-driven emergency response.
If Within the Trenches has ever taught you something, open your eyes to what it is like to be a 911 dispatcher, or has inspired you to become one, then help support us and join our Patreon. Get exclusive bonus content, one-of-a-kind swag, discounts on merchandise, ad-free early access to new episodes, and much more. To join, please visit patreon.com/WTT podcast. And if you're an industry partner, we have something for you as well. And now, for the show.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and this is going to be Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them. This episode is sponsored by InDigital as well as Rapid Deploy, and a big shout out to the Denise Amber Lee Foundation. This episode is actually going to be from the 2021 Be the Difference conference that they put on. I did an Imagine Listening session as well as open mic, and that's what this episode is going to be all about. The first portion that you're going to see here as we get into this episode is going to be a portion of the video where I am sharing all of these powerful I Am 911 stories from all of those who were in attendance. It's hard to explain what it's like to be in, to participate in an Imagine Listening session, whether it be in person, but also virtually. You'll see it. You'll hear it. The emotion is real. The stories are real. All of it. Thank you for the job that all of you do and for attending and participating, for all of you who are watching, listening, and supporting. Once we get past that video portion, the last part of it will be the rest of the stories that were added into the comments. There were so many stories that were added in there. I was unable to read all of them, but I did mention during that session that I would pull out all of the stories and read them and make sure they ended up on the main episode. So that's what we will wrap up with, or the rest of those stories that were added into the comments. Again, thank you all so very much, and to the Denise Amber Lee Foundation for the Be the Difference conference. Without further ado, here is episode 332. Imagine listening. Imagine going to school, enjoying the day, playing with friends at recess, and excited to come home after an awesome day. You say bye to your friends as you leave the bus, go inside your home, and set your bag down. Now imagine you're 911, taking a call from a frantic 10-year-old who found her mom not breathing after a a drug overdose. You instruct her in CPR, and her mom lives. Years later, you think about that little girl and hope she and her mom are well. This is what it's like within the trenches. In this episode, you will hear stories from the I Am 911 movement, a movement I started to fight the reclassification of dispatchers from clerical to protective and bring awareness to the types of calls the 911 dispatchers answer on a daily basis. This is a virtual Imagine Listening session, and we are here at the 2021 Be the Difference virtual conference. Now, you heard the warning at the beginning, but I must warn you again and add that if you suffer from PTSD or have suicidal tendencies, you are listening at your own risk. The stories you're about to hear are all true and come from the dispatchers who lived them. While some stories have a good outcome, the majority are horrifying. This is our reality. Your worst day is our everyday. So let's start with a bang. I want you to imagine each story. Become the dispatcher who has taken each call. And imagine listening. So if you have an I Am 911 story that you would like to share, please add them in the comments now, and I will go through and I will read them. Again, this is our time. This is our time to share. So as I wait for some stories to come in, I've got one here, actually, that I can start out with, that I can share, that was sent in to me. And the story goes, I answered your call that morning, and you told me that your dad wasn't breathing. You sounded young, so I asked how old you were, and you told me you were 16. You told me that you didn't realize he wasn't breathing and sat down on the couch and ate your breakfast next to him before calling. You sounded so innocent and didn't understand the gravity of what was going on quite yet. As I began talking you through CPR, all I could picture was my own teenage son, and praying that he would never have to experience this. As we counted compressions a lot together, I had tears streaming down my face, and it took everything inside me not to let out a sob. I still think about you often and pray that you are finding your way without your dad. I am 911. Thank you so much for sending in that story. I can promise you that that story will help so many, because there's a lot of people out there who take these calls and some of them feel alone. And that's one of the best things I think about this profession and this movement, that so many people started sharing and so many messages were coming in from dispatchers and call takers saying, man, I thought I was the only one. But after reading all of these, I know that I'm not alone. How amazing is that? That's the power of storytelling. Your stories are doing this for those in the profession and those in the public who are learning. We've got one here that says, I was there when you made your phone call to the major, telling him exactly where your body was going to be laying. I sent everyone to that location, and that is when I found out that you had committed suicide. We had worked together for the 18 years that I have been at the sheriff's office. I am 911. Thank you for sharing that. I've got another story here that says, I was there as you begged for someone to come take the gun to save your life. I was there as you pulled the trigger and took your life. I was there as you took your last breath. I was there as help was too late. I am 911. Thank you for sharing. Again, for some it might not feel like it, but in sharing these together, we're healing. So it makes this so amazing. Thank you all for sharing these stories and for being here for this session. I appreciate it more than you know. I've got one here that says, you took a 911 call one evening, a young mother screaming that her kitchen was on fire. She begged for help over and over. You are a dispatcher in training and have no idea what to do. The mother is screaming and crying. Then a small baby starts to scream. The mother starts screaming. The baby was burned and that the skin was dripping off. You lose your sense of where you were and what to do. I am 911. Thank you for sharing. Now I see there's a lot that are coming in, so I'm trying to scroll back up to read them as fast as possible. So for some reason I don't get to yours, I promise you, it will be in the episode. I will go back and get that and make sure to read it. Imagine taking a call where a 17-year-old male that had been accidentally shot by his best friend was dying. For some reason, I asked for the victim's name and said it out loud. My fellow coworker, my friend, who was sitting near me, immediately came over to my console and said, that is my son. While I continued to give life-saving measures, other dispatchers were getting her off the floor and headed to the hospital where she could meet the ambulance. Unfortunately, her son did not live. Thank you for sharing. I was there talking you through infant CPR, and you were scared and nervous, but also angry. I was angry because in between the counting and the sobbing, you were also asking your wife why she had done it. Your pain was doubled that day. You lost 2 people, and I listened as you realized that. I am 911. New Year's Eve, a time to celebrate. 911 rings. The voice of a desperate young male pleads for you to send help to his brother, who left his house intoxicated. The young man's voice pleading, begging for help from us to stop what he knows will happen because his younger brother is behind the wheel of a car intoxicated. We do find his brother 1 hour later. He had crashed 2 miles from his house and died. Your voice rings in my ears, and I will always remember. I will not forget. I am 911. Thank you for sharing. My father just hit me, is what I heard. He hit you? Yes. I listened to you die on the phone. And I also heard your father kill himself in the background. What you actually said was, my father just shot me. The outcome would not have been any different, but I'm sorry I didn't hear you. Thank you for sharing. I took your call when your 4-month-old son was found not breathing in his crib. I gotta scroll back up. There's several that just came in all at the same time. Okay, there we go. I took your call when your 4-month-old son was found not breathing in his crib. As you screamed for him to begin breathing, I dispatched deputies to your house and fire rescue instructed CPR, tears rolling down my face as I thought of my own 4-month-old at home with his father. I slept on my son's floor for a week, waking up every hour to check on him. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Again, I'm trying to catch up with all of these stories as they're coming in. There are so many, but I will get them all in there. Even if I don't get a chance to read them, I will make sure to get them in there. So hang in there with me. I know that these are hard stories, but they're powerful ones. And it's okay. I answered the 911 call from your mom, who said your husband had killed you and himself. Years of experience, years of being strong, all went away when I heard your 3-year-old cry, "Mommy." This one got me. This one made me feel. I still run the race they put on in your memory. I'll never forget you or your daughter. I am 911. Thank you for sharing. From a coworker. You asked me what my name was. I told you. You said, "I don't want to die alone." And shot yourself in the head. I will never get that out of mine. Thank you. Sweet Jameson, I think of you every time someone talks about a great day at school and a trip on the bus home. You stood 15 feet from the street watching as your car came towards you. I can't imagine what you were thinking about, but to see your face in the paper the next day, that smile on your face, it crushed me. 11 years on this earth was not enough. You aren't forgotten by this dispatcher. I am 911. Thank you for sharing. Hang in there, everyone. And again, thank you all for sharing these powerful stories. August 1987. 1 year on the job, and you called 911 screaming, "I need an ambulance. I need an ambulance." I didn't know where you were. Initially, thought you were a child playing. You had come to pick up your son from his caregiver, only to find him still sleeping. He had passed away from SIDS. I can still hear your screams today. I am 911. Thank you for sharing the story. You called me while you were walking to jump off the bridge. We talked while I got you some help. You didn't jump that night, but I often wonder how you were doing today. I am 911. Thank you. I answered your call and listened to you cry and tell me how your ex-husband would not take your daughter to her leukemia chemo treatments over 100 miles away. I made arrangements with you to take you and your daughter to her appointments for several weeks, and then made arrangements for a local agency to assist, as my own daughter just finished her chemo less than a year earlier for leukemia. I was there when you had to lay her to rest 2 years later. I think of you often, as I also laid my daughter to rest a few years later. I am 911. Thank you for sharing. I was there when you found your 14-month-old not breathing because the family dog slept on him. I walked you through CPR while your husband screamed obscenities and blaming you for what happened. Your strength to continue CPR while your husband did unspeakable things to your dog. I still hear your tears, your dog's yelps, and your husband's abuse. I will never forget you. I am 911. We've got just a few more minutes, and I'm going to try to get to as many of these stories that are here. It looks like I am halfway through the ones that are being that have been put in here. So thank you. I can't thank you enough for the stories that are being shared. And for all of you who are in here right now and commenting to every single person who is sharing a story, that you're here in support for everyone. So thank you so much. Again, we just got a few minutes left here before we jump into the next part. Hang in there. I received a call at the start of my 0400 shift. Shots could be heard in the background. There was rapid fire shots in the hallway outside the apartment, glass shattering around him, and the possible suspect knocking at his door. His 13-year-old son immediately knew what to do to get out of bed and hide in the bathtub. The caller then pleaded with me, "Tell me what to do. Tell me where to go. Please, please help." We later learned, after the fact, that a bullet had actually pierced through one of the windows not too far from where he originally was. Thank you for sharing. I was there when you made your phone call to say that your 2-year-old son wasn't breathing, told you how to rescue breathing, then heard the child cry. I sat at the console and cried because I have a nephew the same age. In the following years, my nephew and the child became friends. And was at their high school graduation, where the child gave a speech as the class president. I am 911. Wow. Thank you for sharing that one. There are many stories that are in here. I'm scrolling down to get to the most recent that's right here. And I'm just looking at the comments. There's so many more that are coming in. Thank you all so very much for sharing these stories. We are running on the 30-minute mark, the halfway mark for this session. And if I didn't get to read your story, believe me, it'll be in there. All of this is being recorded, and I will make sure to read every single one of the stories that are being shared here so that I can get it out there on an episode. So again, thank you for all of this, for being here in support of each other, for Imagine Listening, for sharing these I Am 911 stories. Thank you so very much for the job that you do. And Robbie, how am I? I'm okay. You know, I don't know that I've ever been asked that after the first part of a session. Let me turn on some light here as it's getting a little dark over here on the side. I feel good though. This is good to be able to read, these stories and share them and get them out there. That's what Imagine Listening is about. Is sharing these stories and finding some way to heal together in support of each other. And that's what all of you are doing. Oh, man. Thank you. Again, I will make sure to get all of those stories in there. I was trying to read through them as fast as I could, and obviously some of them got me, especially that last one there. Oh my God. But that was really good. Thank you so much. I feel my heart is full right now. And to be able to get all of those out there. I hope this first part has been good for you as well. The entire week, but especially what we just did right now. That was just under 30 minutes because I took about 7 minutes to explain what Imagine Listening was, but the amount of stories that we're able to read in that time, that's what this first part is about. So thank you all for sharing your stories for the I Am 911 movement and for being there for each other. So with that being said, and going through this, Roxana, actually, so Roxana says that, this should be published in a book. I'm actually working on a book called Imagine Listening. I'm hoping to get them out there with all the stories that were shared and continue to be shared every single day. They're going to be put in a book that the memes that are brought in and the text that was sent, and the memes that we put together. There's a book. I've actually been working on it for a couple of years, but there has been a lot that has been going on, as you can see. And somebody asked about my spaceship and back. I do screen printing, so I'm wearing my Imagine Listening t-shirt right now. So that's what my spaceship is back there. It's a print press. But yes, there's a book that'll be coming out soon, and there will be multiple volumes. But either way, that was Imagine Listening. Thank you so much, every single one of you, for participating. Those are just a few stories from the Imagine Listening session during the Be the Difference conference. That was the video portion, the portion that had the stories that I was able to read at that time during the first part of the session. The following are the stories that I've pulled out of the comments to be able to read them. They were all part of this amazing session. Imagine answering the call that there is an occupied structure fire, occupied times 2, a mother and child. Imagine hearing the screams and cries from the parent that is watching the fire. Imagine paging the volunteer fire departments and getting no response. Begging for someone to respond and the sound of your voice breaking as you page the fire department, knowing that you will be forever changed after that call. I am 911. I answered a call about a trooper lying on the ground not moving. I had to dispatch you to this call. You got on scene and screamed for EMS, 1018. You then began to beg me for EMS, begging, wanting to know where EMS was at. As you were watching your friend of 20 plus years dying on the side of the road from a gunshot wound. I hear those words all the time I hear you in my sleep sometimes. Your friend died on the side of the road that day, and a piece of all of us died with him. I am 911. I was on the other end of the phone when he asked me to make sure that your dog was taken care of. And then, all of a sudden, I heard a gunshot on the other end. You had shot yourself. You were retired law enforcement. I am 911. I was holding my husband's hand when he died from cancer. 9 months later, I was told I had breast cancer. I received a call from a lady who just wanted to talk, scared that she had cancer and wanted to die, wanted to end it all. I told her I knew her pain. She laughed at me. Then I told her my story. She said, "If you can make it, I can too." I am 911. I have taken a call where the male states he is going to commit suicide and doesn't want his wife to find him or make a mess inside the house. I tried to say something to stop him, and he said he had made up his mind. I heard the phone be put down, the door open, and the gunshot. Next thing I heard was the officer on scene. I am 911. I listened as your kidnapper was trying to break down the door of the convenience store bathroom where you hunkered down after convincing him to let you go pee. You were terrified. I stayed with you until officers found you, and I heard them take him down on the other side. We cried together. I am 911. I heard the concern in your voice as you were concerned for your suicidal fiancé who locked himself in his bathroom. I kept you calm, listening to you talk about your relationship while we got help sent your way. I then heard the gunfire, a single shot. You screamed. You then told me you heard a thump from the room and started to see blood trickle in under the door. I stayed on the phone with you when you ran outside and waited for help. You thanked me. I am 911. I was there the night you called about getting raped in a park and didn't know who the male was. A few years later, I was there when you found justice, and the man that did that to you was found guilty and was put in prison for what he did to you. I got to shake your hand, and you thanked me. I am 911. I took your call on a late December Sunday night. You told me your name and that you were in the backyard. I expected you to continue and complain about loud music or racing cars. Instead, you say, "I am suiciding. I've decided to eat the gun. I don't want lights or sirens. There's church service going on, and there are neighborhood kids outside." As the officers go on scene, I heard gunshot. I think of you often and hope you found peace. I am 911. I took your call where you said you had an argument with your son and you found him in the bathtub, not breathing. As you took him out, I asked you his age, and you told me he was 3 years old. Then I found out you were frustrated with him. And beat him to death, then put him in the tub to make it look like he drowned. I am 911. You called me and said you wanted to call 911, not to help you, but so that we could help your son, who was in the next room. You knew exactly what you wanted to do, and you said that if police or EMS knocked on the door, you would pull the trigger. Sure enough, there was a knock at the door, and you pulled the trigger while I listened. I was so numb. I felt so alone. I'll remember this, and remember what it sounded like when the gun went off for the rest of my life. I am 911. I took your call when your son was on the bathroom floor. You said he overdosed again. You told me he had been given Narcan 6 times the previous week. You told me he had just walked in the house from rehab. Your voice held no emotion. You had no emotion. You thanked me for sending the ambulance, and you hung up. Your tired voice broke me. I never found out if your son lived to overdose again. I never found out if you were okay. I am 911. I was there when teenage you found your teenage sister laying alongside the road on her side, cold and lifeless yards from the driveway to where you live. I was there as you screamed, cried, and begged. You asked how you would ever get through this, how you would ever get over this. I explained to you that it would hurt forever. It wouldn't get better. It would get different. Encouraging you, hang on to all the lovely memories and moments. You began to tell me stories of your sister and the tree she loved. I told you I could empathize with you. You screamed at me. You found your sister dead on the side of the road? I explained I had not, but lost 2 brothers. My 2 best friends. We connected, and I heard the relief that you were not alone in your grief. I think about you every day and hope. And hope they find out what truly happened to your sister. I hope you found peace. I am 911. I was there when you called at 2 a.m. You and your friend were riding in a dune buggy on the road and were hit by a car. You were holding your best friend in your arms, asking me how to stop the bleeding coming from his head. You described it as gray and red, realizing there was no hope. I heard your cries for help. I could also hear your friend taking his last breaths. There was nothing I could do to change the outcome. I will never forget you and your friend. I am 911. I took the 911 call from your 13-year-old daughter who said, Dad set Mom on fire, as both your daughters were getting water from the bathroom sink to pour on you to try to put the fire out. It was a very short phone call before the fire spread and disconnected the phone. I testified in court to help be your voice when your husband was convicted to 75 years in prison for homicide. New to 911, your daughter's phone call made me realize I will always be. I am 911. You called me because your house was on fire and you were trapped in a bedroom on the second floor. You told me you were too big to get through the window in the bedroom. I told you to stay low. We are on the way. 8 minutes to get to your home seemed like an eternity. I relayed your location to the first due engine. The fear and helplessness in your voice weighed heavily on me. I was doing the best I could. The engine arrived and rescued you. You were safe. I am 911. August 26th, 2018. Your mom called 911. I answered. She found you on the floor in your room several hours after you had shot yourself. Your sister was in the background screaming. I knew it was you as soon as I heard her voice. There was nothing she could do. There was nothing I could do to help her. I couldn't hug her or you. I had to be 911 that day. I couldn't be human. Our Will, our soldier. We miss you. I am 911. I took your call the day you found your 16-month-old daughter in the driveway, bloody and not breathing. You thought she had been attacked, but no one was around. I asked you questions, and we figured out together that she had been run over by her grandmother, who had just left after picking up the other kids. I am 911. I called you. That night, your neighbor called to say your dad was there with a gun. I kept you on the phone during the hostage situation, and we listened together as he beat and shot your mother. I was unsuccessful in talking him down, but you are alive. But I am so glad I had you hide until officers broke in and after a firefight found you. I am 911. I heard your screams for help because you couldn't find your daughter, who was underwater. You screamed and cried as you held on to a tree branch as I tried to locate exactly where you were. I could only tell you that help was on the way, praying that by some miracle, your baby could survive. I was at the council, crying and praying, which was all I do in that moment. I still hear your screams sometimes, and I pray for your peace often. I am 911. I answered 911 when you'd been stung by bees and couldn't get your EpiPen open. Your breathing was so bad that you had difficulty telling me the address. The ambulance in your community was already on a call, and I knew your help would be coming from 2 towns away. I listened as your breathing became worse and worse. I felt helpless. The stars were aligned, and there was a deputy within a few miles of you. When he arrived, your breathing had become agonal. He was able to administer the EpiPen and you began breathing normally. What you don't know is that this is the only call in 16 years that really messed me up. I felt helpless and thought you were going to die in my ear that day. I am 911. As I sat dispatching on the fire radio that rainy night and heard the words, "We just had a medic fall off the bridge," I will never forget the voices asking for more units, a helicopter, and me saying, "No one is flying," because of the weather. I felt my heart sink and I literally couldn't breathe. But we worked through it together because we had to. February 9th, 2012 was the day that changed my life in dispatch. I am 911. I answered the administrative line when my mom called for help frantically because my stepdad was having a problem. Little did we know at that time they had a brain bleed and had managed to drive Mom safely several blocks to their house. I emotionally finished my shift and drove to the hospital to join my family in Dad's room. We lost him 2 days later. I am 911. I listened as your father called and told me he was going to kill himself. We spoke for a while. I wasn't able to talk him out of it. I heard a snap, thinking he knocked something down. He had shot himself right before officers arrived. I heard them run into the house looking for him and trying to stop you before going into the room he was in. I will never forget your screams and the officers trying to calm you. I will never forget hearing that little girl. I am 911. I was at the field command post as the ERT was called to a barricaded subject with a hostage. We heard the entry command and then multiple gunshots. The first thought in my head was, well, somebody got stupid and got what he deserved. Then, the calls of subjects down, only to realize that it was 2 officers down. Dispatch called me about 30 minutes later to tell me we had lost one. Deputy Ford, end of watch, 4/5/2009. It still hurts to think about. I am 911. I was on the phone with you when you told me you had took 3 bottles of pills and wanted to end your life due to family issues you were going through. My coworkers got responders to you, but during our conversation, you stopped talking to me. I could hear your dog in the background and a friend walking in screaming. By the time the responders got to you, you were not breathing, and they were able to get you back. I still wonder where you are today, because you were just 2 years older than I, and I knew you from school. I am 911. Heavy flash flooding caused water rescues all over our county. The incident commander reported that the rescue boat was in distress and a rescuer was lost into the darkness and the fast-moving currents. The fire captain washed away was my nephew. The 911 call came in an hour later from a nearby residence. My nephew was the caller and had survived, hanging on a tree for the entire time. He was then, and still is, a 911 dispatcher. This event changed me forever. I M911. Those were the I Am 911 stories that were in the comments during that first portion of the Imagine Listening session that was done back in February during the Be the Difference conference. Thank you all for sharing those stories, for being the most vital piece of public safety and doing what you do on a daily basis. This is not an easy job. Obviously, from the calls that you just heard. The amazing thing also in there during that time was the amount of love and support that was given from everyone that was in attendance. I just want to read a couple of the messages for support that were added in. The people had put in the comments, and they say, I may not know any of you, but thank you for the love and support. I love you guys. The healing powers of sharing is amazing. And another that says, it does feel healing to talk about our stories. Thank you for listening and sharing for us. Hugs and love to all of you and your bravery to share. And then finally, thank you to every one of you who are courageous and shared your stories. Our world is so lucky to have people like you serving and protecting others through your heart for service. I am honored to be in your presence here. Again, thank you so very much for the job that you do. All of you who attended and those who have watched this as well as listened to all of these powerful stories. Thank you so very much. Again, this was part of Imagine Listening. This is episode 332. Episode 333 will be the second half of that, which will be open mic, which will be the funny stories from 911, the lighter side of dispatch, something that'll be very much needed after this episode. But again, thank you. This Within the Trenches podcast episode has been sponsored by InDigital as well as Rapid Deploy. If you have any comments, questions, or you want to be a guest on the show, you can email us, and that is going to be wttpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter. That is @91podcast. You can like us on Facebook. That is facebook.com/Within the Trenches podcast. And if you are looking for any bonus content, you can also find us on patreon.com/WTT podcast. The video portion of this can be seen on Facebook, Twitter, as well as YouTube and LinkedIn. And of course, the audio portion, as always, can be heard 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everyone.